Mr. Ashok Vajpeyi has traversed, as you know, through the fields of literature, culture, academia, and administration with equal elan. He was at the forefront of award Vapsi in the recent times when he returned the Sahitya Academy Award and also degree to the University of Hyderabad for its anti-Dalit instance. He is in the lead of informed resistance of retrograde policies and practices of the present regime. I have been an avid reader of his weekly column, Kabhi Kabhar, when it was being published by Jansatta, till recently. I did it to improve my Hindi. But while doing so, I also suffered from periodic depression. At the ocean of knowledge, he seemed to wade through with practiced ease compared to my own plebeian moorings.
Friends, as a civil servant, I have traversed many areas without having acquired expertise in any. So I speak to you as a poet, and poets not exactly very logical animals, as you no doubt know. So I'm going to, and it's very difficult to speak on the same theme after Punyani has spoken, but let me come out with what I think. The general background, I think the global background seems to be that all religions have grown aggressive and violent and intolerant. There's hardly any religion which can claim, oh, this is my problem. You know, I am primitive in handling technology. One of the ambitions which I carry and which will never be fulfilled, to make a PowerPoint presentation. I just don't know how to do it. I look at great childlike wonder as those who do it. I still believe in the power of words like Mr. Punyani. So, now, they have become intolerant, not only among other religions, they have also become intolerant of their own plurality. So each one of them thinks it's a monolith, that it is very properly defined and things of that kind. So all religions, without exception. Now, they have all deserted their own spirituality, more or less again. As Mr. Punyani was telling you, quite graphically, how the issues raised today by religion are not spiritual. In fact, my third contention is that while humankind has progressed socially and politically and technologically in many other ways, one area in which mankind is not progressing is theology. Our theologies, as they are located and housed in various religions, seem to have been frozen in time. By reinterpreting them sometimes, when you are a great figure like Mahatma Gandhi or someone like that, something happens by way of reinterpretation. But otherwise, there is a theological frozenness. And in India, you see, the constitution was not supposed to be a spiritual document. It is supposed to be a socio-political document, and yet it tends to organize not merely the socio-political economic life of India, it also tends to reorganize the ethical life of India. Because the values by which the constitution is governed, which were mentioned, freedom, equality, justice, fraternity, these are all basically spiritual values. They were not born in the domain of political or social action. They were taken by these socio-political activists from what remained the domain of the spirituality. And therefore, there is a kind of a problem there. All religions in India, and we have 8 of them, 4 we invented, 4 came to us from outside. All the 8 religions in India are falling behind the democratic and republic values. They are not willing to accept openly, not willing to amend their Sanhitas or Smritis or whatever may be the other morally or legally binding documents. They have not come out openly in favor of freedom or equality or justice or fraternity. Indian religions are behind our constitutional and republican dreams, values and aspirations. This, according to me, is a huge crisis. This has never happened before, perhaps, or if it happened, I do not know. Now, Hinduism. One of the major problems about Hinduism is that when we started analyzing religions, we tend to think of religions in singular ways. Now, Hinduism has nothing singular. In fact, Hinduism perhaps does not allow the singular to exist for a long while. It converts it into the plural. So, you do not have a single book, although Mr. Savarkar and others may like to have one. You do not have a single god. You started perhaps with Brahman, and then you had 3, and then you had 330 million now, according to the latest count. And at some point, our Deva Sankhya seemed to have been larger than our Jan Sankhya, because we didn't have possibly 330 million people, but we had gods, etc. We have no condition of temple going. I am a non-believer, and yet I am a Hindu, because Hinduism permits it. It does not restrict you. It has no provision for conversion. Now, these are some features of Hinduism, and kindly think how much of these features now exist in your daily life. How they have been made to almost disappear. Now, Hinduism was marked by its enormous, irrepressible and inherent plurality. 1. 2. Of beliefs. It's wrong to believe, wrong to think that Hinduism had one belief. It is not as if the violent wars had not been fought between Shaivites and Vaishnavites. The Vaishnavites have destroyed temples of Buddhists, of Shaivites, and the other way around. If you read a recent book on political violence in ancient India, you will know how many times violence was resorted to. We are not such a non-violent people as is made out to be. We are quite a violent people. In fact, today we are perhaps the most violent people in the world. We take offense at the slightest pretext. Anyway, then you have 4 Vedas, 18 Upanishads, 2 great epics, 6 schools of classical philosophy, 4 of which do not mention God. They do not discuss God. You have customs and cuisines, which are different. In the South, for instance, a Hindu girl can possibly marry her mama, but in the North, it cannot happen. So there is a plurality of customs, there is a plurality of cuisine and languages. Hinduism is not Sanskrit only. Yes, Sanskrit is a great language, but there are 700 odd million languages in Hindu. If Hindus are in a majority, these languages are spoken by the majority of Hindus. So there is a plurality of language, custom, cuisine, costume, everything. Nothing is singular. And as has been pointed out by the previous speaker, we have some great sayings. One was, of course, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, which was recently spoken at Devas, or Devas, whatever the name. I thought Devas because I am so fond of Kumar Gandhar, so the idea that the world is a family occurred, perhaps historically, and we can be proud of that if you want to be, here, where it is the Ved which is saying this. And the other is ekam sad vipraha bahudha vadanti. Although I disagree with it, but that's part. My disagreement is also permissible as a Hindu. I have a feeling that the truth of music and the truth of painting and the truth of literature are not the same truth. They're different truths. So I have this idea with ekam sad vipraha bahudha vadanti. But at least there was an idea that truth is one, and wise men speak differently, severally of it. This is a great idea. Then, nahi manushyat kinchit shreshtatara. Nobody, nothing is greater than Homo sapiens. This is being said in Hinduism, which also had on the other side not a homocentric view of the world. We did not think that the man was at the center. We had great respect, sacredness, religious, the inviolability of nature. You know, and I was a student of St. Stephen's and I got into the civil service and then got married. And when I went back, taking my wife, my mother, who was a religious person, made me go to a peepal tree to worship it, to a well to worship it, apart from a temple. And she knew that I'm a non-believer, and my wife was a non-believer. But this was, I thought, a way of expressing one's gratitude to things which help you live your daily life. And the well, now of course the wells are not there, and perhaps one will go and pray other things. But anyway, this was an acknowledgement that you were not alone, that man is not alone. Hinduism, like other great religions, had a great cosmic consciousness. You are part of Brahmanda. And that, and sometimes I think, as a poet, and poets are lunatics anyway, so I think that if I am sad, there is a star somewhere whose eyes is wet, or wet. Now, this part of your thinking that you're part of a great cosmos, that cosmos is interrelated, that you are responsible for others and others are responsible for you, that you are responsible to trees and jungles and rivers and animals and they are responsible for you, etc. Now, all these ideas and Leela, you see, unlike the Semitic religions who think that Adam and Eve were thrown out of the paradise having committed the original sin, they have a sense of original sin. Our cosmos was born out of joy. He was this poor god alone, and he didn't know what to do himself, got bored, so divided himself into two, and they started playing. And out of the Leela of the two, of Prakriti and Purush, the world is born. So we are Leela born. And we have continued this tradition of Leela. We play with our gods. All the Bhakti poets have made fun of gods. Krishna ke, Ram ka, Phalane ka, Tikane ka, Harek ka, Batak bana ke. Tahi rahi ki chohariyan chachiya bhar chhach pe naach nachawe. जिसको सुरेश महेश यानी क्या क्या संत मुनि गाते हैं उसको ताही अहेरी की छोहरियां छछिया बन छाछ पे नाच नचाओ, etc., etc. We have made fun of gods, unlike, I think sometimes, like the Semitic religions who think that God made man in his image. In India at least, man made God in his image. So we have so many avatars and all of them commit mistakes and sins and all of them get punished, etc. So we have a different concept, playing with with whatever is given to you, etc. And then Hinduism created great poetry. I mean, Vedic poetry, the epics, and then later the bhakti poetry and the various other kinds of poetry in various languages. This is all done. Religion has been a great source of creativity earlier, just as it has become in our time a great source of violence and destruction and negativity. This is not its history. It has created, and all religions have created, not only Hinduism. The great drama, Kalidas, Bhavabhuti, etc., the great sculptors, Konark, Khajuraho. I mean, in whole, and I have edited a book recently when this whole business about dissent being anti-national. And the book is called India Dissents. And I have made an anthology of 550 pages, although modestly priced, $4.99, in which from the Rig Veda to the hymn of creation, Nasadiya Sut से लेकर अभी तक गौरी लंकेश तक, उसका नया एडिशन आ गया तो उसमें हमने गौरी लंकेश को भी शामिल किया. India had a great tradition of argument, of dissent. अगर हिंदुइज्म इतना ही सर्वज्ञ और सर्वसंतोषी था, तो फिर बौद्ध धर्म कैसे पैदा हुआ? फिर जैन धर्म कहाँ से आ गया? फिर सिख धर्म अलग क्यों हुआ? Obviously, there were aspects from which, so there was dissent in faith and dissent from state. भीष्म पितामह शरशैया पर लेटे हैं, उनसे पूछते हैं दोनों जाकर, युधिष्ठिर भी दुर्योधन भी, ये राजधर्म क्या है? तो कई बातें वो कहते हैं, वो तो पंडित आदमी हैं, पंडित लोग मेरी तरह बहुत देर तक बोलते रहते हैं. तो उन्होंने कहा कि राजा का एक कर्तव्य है कि वो अपने राज्य में रहने वाले बुद्धिमान व्यक्तियों का सम्मान करे, और दूसरा कि राजा का ये कर्तव्य है कि वो राजकाज में मूर्खों और लालचियों को न लगाए, तो राजकाज में न लगाए. तीसरा कहा कि राजा का कर्तव्य है कि अपनी प्रजा को हर प्रकार के भय से मुक्त रखे. Now these are all with the same tradition which is being cited and misinterpreted. The same tradition enjoins you to do all this to the king, etc. Then you have कहा किस और समाज में, संभवतः ग्रीक समाज में it happened, but look at what is Purusha. I mean, you have to have Shastrarth. If you come, Indian intellectual traditions have been undermined. We have not understood them. If you come up with a new idea, the only logical and permissible way was that you first say what has been thought about this before. So you will say Purva Paksh. Then you will present your point of view. And then it will be open to public debate. Shankaracharya had to face a public debate with Mandan Mishra and his wife. And after you have defeated them in public debate, then your idea can prevail. Not before that. This was the tradition of interrogation, dissent, questioning, etc. And openness. And Hinduism of the... See, we have suffered from a notion of purity. There's an anthropological survey of India had engaged 250 social scientists to have another survey like the British had, people of India, and it has been published by OUP in 50-odd volumes. And the first volume is a very interesting volume. It arrives at two conclusions. One, that there are more than 4,600 sociologically definable communities in India. 4,600, more than that. And the second is, none of them can claim racial purity. None. So I, being a poet, having dushta buddhi, I derive a third unstated conclusion. And that is that India is a ceaseless celebration of racial impurity. None of us, my dear friends, you'll be happy to know, or unhappy, I don't know, that none of us is pure. But these are the notions which we sort of are hearing these days. I'll come to them in a minute. So there was an openness, there's change. Mind you, Hinduism did not remain the same after it came into contact and dialogue with Islam. Islam came to India 1,000 years ago, and we have had debates, and they are recorded, both in Persian and in Sanskrit. Mr. Hegde, whom unmentionable name you somehow mentioned, unmentionable because of his vast ignorance, but you know, ignorant are having the best. This मौनों के अभ्युदय का समय है ना, बहुत ठीक ही है. But बहरहाल, there was a Pandit, a Sanskrit Pandit in Pune, who started translating Origins of Species by Darwin from English into Sanskrit, because new knowledge must be brought into Sanskrit. He could not complete it. The incomplete manuscript is in a Pune library. So there was a time when a Sanskrit Pandit could think, almost the same time when Darwin's book had appeared, to bring this new knowledge to India through that form. Anyway, the one big failure of Hinduism has been its inability or failure to convert its free, open-ended metaphysical vision into social structure. So the caste system emerged, and whatever may be the logic and defense, etc., of its ancient practice, blah, 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 it is unpardonable, humanly, that millions of people should be turned untouchable. And that is a sin we have not yet completely sort of recovered from. Now the Hindutva. Now Hindutva is actually not a religious movement at all. It has nothing to do with Hinduism, as we understand it. If what the two of us have tried to tell you, this Hindutva has nothing to do with it. It is a social, it's in fact a 19th century construct of the British colonial mind, where people have to be put against each other and all that. And this notion of Semitization of Hinduism. So how are you going to meet the challenge, whatever challenge you feel from Islam and Christianity? Semitization. So you want one temple, one God, one holy book. The other day, our foreign minister, or is she foreign minister, or whatever she is now, I don't know, said that she wanted Gita to be declared the national book. Now, at that time, in Kabhi Kabhar, my friend somehow read, I wrote a piece saying that in our tradition, when you own a work, you write about that work. You just can't own Gita by uttering the shlokas and remembering them. You own them. And I said there has been a great tradition. Tilak wrote, Aurobindo wrote on Gita, Gandhi wrote on Gita, Radhakrishnan wrote on Gita. Give me the name of one RSS scholar who ever wrote on any of these great achievements of Hinduism. None. Nobody. You decry and this, that, and the other. You may keep it in the temple and worship it, but you don't have right to own it. There is an Indian Hindu tradition to own a great work of art by writing a treatise. Write a treatise, and you become, in an intellectual sense, its owner. Then it's a victimhood of Hindus. that we have been victims. Oh, you are in this country, you're 80% of the people, whatever is happening here is mostly due to you. And you're saying you're victims? Of what? Look at the Muslims, they are 17 or 18%. India is the second largest Muslim country in the world. Our Muslim population, I'm told, is larger than the combined Muslim population of Pakistan and Bangladesh. And it is only second to Indonesia. That's all. But their representation in all walks of life is not more than 2 or 3%. These are facts and figures. And you say, have been Muslim appeasement. So, hatred, I should finish now? Oh yes, because I am about Then, hatred. See, I was in Raj Saman, which is where a Muslim laborer was killed by a man who they have never met each other. He was a laborer, he was called by him, and then he was not there. He called him second time, and the second time he came, before anything could happen, this man attacked him with some weapon, killed him, and his 14-year-old son videotaped he threw some petrol and lit fire. He was burnt also, apart from being attacked and mutilated. And there's a 14-year-old son who prepared a video and put it on and there were 3 lakh rupees were collected in support of this murderer. Now, this is what the ethos of violence, cruelty, that the other has no right to exist, that the other must be demolished, that the other cannot be coped with, so destroy the other. Now you just can't. If you destroy this other, your arms will all collapse. Even if you were physically able to do it, luckily you will not be, but anyway. Then, there are 4 myths which are being created. 4 things which are modes of action. Violence, killings, lynching, trolling. I am not on Facebook once in a while, something. I get such abuses. When I returned the award, my dear, all my parents were called into action. They were dead, fortunately. But all this keeps on happening. That's also a kind of violence. Purity, vegetarianism, masculinity, this, that, and the other. Goraksha. All these notions, it's an extremely illiberal ethos that we have been thrown in. And our so-called spiritual leaders, forget about Swami Agnivesh, who is a different kind and a dear friend, who has always stood by us. None of our spiritual leaders comes out and condemns these killings, these violence, whether it is on women or on Adivasis or on minorities or whoever. You are spiritual leaders. You are supposed to speak. And they keep on giving you, therefore, I end on that. मैं तो खैर नास्तिक हूँ तो मुझे अध्यात्मिक इत्यादि का इतना वरदान नहीं मिला है. पर जब कोई बाबा पकड़ा जाता है, बलात्कार, हिंसा इत्यादि के अपराध में जेल में जाता है, तब मुझे आध्यात्मिक सुख मिलता है. कुछ तो बचा. I mean, these spiritual leaders, they do not defend freedom, they do not defend justice, they do not defend the weak and the poor, and claim religious superiority. Is a travesty of all religious values. Mr. Sunyan was saying that we have learned great values from religions. But to be reduced to this, that we are helpless. And the worst thing is the citizens of this country are silent. That silence, which according to me is utter cowardice, or lack of commitment to values which we had all sworn by, we must speak. Nothing will happen. हमारे कवि थे रघुवीर साहब, उनका था न टूटे तिलस्म सत्ता का, कुछ ना हो, मैं बोलूंगा तो एक आदमी बोला ये तो दर्ज होगा। थैंक यू।